Hello, and welcome to Lawful Insight. My name is Attorney Tricia Morales Padilla, and I'm an attorney here in San Antonio, Texas. And this podcast is meant to help you make the road a little less bumpy when you're going through your divorce and your custody matters. If you have any questions, you can look us up at moralespadillaLaw.com. You can also email us at lawfulinsightpodcast@gmail.com. Today, I want to answer some of the frequently asked questions that I'm asked a lot. I've kind of compiled a list of some of the main ones, and I kind of want to go through those one by one and answer some questions for you. So today, the first question is, can I get a divorce without an attorney? So there's always an option to get a divorce without an attorney. It just kind of depends on what county you live in. Sometimes the staff attorney or whatever entity they have that deals with the pro se applicants. So pro se is somebody going without an attorney. Some of them have rules for when you can go through them. So go through the staff attorney's office. So for example, in Bexar County, if you're going through the staff attorney's office and you file your petition pro se, if the other side files an answer, they are going to tell you that you can no longer go through the staff attorney's office because they don't represent you. And sometimes it's also if you have assets for more than $50,000. Because a lot of the pro se forms are very cookie cutter. They're one size fits all and you can't tweak them at all, and they don't handle a lot of assets. So sometimes you'll need to research that and take a look at what fits your situation. So the second question is, can I date someone else during my divorce process? So this is one of the main questions that I get answered a lot, because sometimes people are separated for long amounts of time. You might be separated for a year or two, you're in another relationship. The general rule that I would say is, obviously, if it's a situation where you guys have been separated for a long time, that's different, but it's just never a smart idea to start a new relationship when you're in the middle of a divorce process. And part of the reason for that is because there is something called the standing orders that go out that the other party is served with. And in those standing orders, it says that there is not to be any overnight guests that aren't related to the child from the hours of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So if you're already in another relationship and maybe you guys are living together, you're already in violation of those standing orders. Now, again, if you've been separated for 5 years and you've moved on and you have a new relationship, that might be different, but you just really want to minimize the amount of stuff that your spouse can use against you. So if you can at all help it, if you separate and you think divorce is on the horizon, I would suggest start moving forward with that process so that way you can make a clean break and just kind of move on with whatever other relationship you wish to have. Do I have to pay child support if we have a 50-50 visitation? So normally, I kind of want to preface that when people say 50-50, they normally mean like week on, week off. So you have the kids for a week, your spouse has the kids for a week. In that specific scenario, it just depends, because if you guys agree to no child support, then you don't have to pay child support. And I'll always reiterate this, and I know it's kind of the general thread through a lot of my podcasts, that if you agree to terms, you can pretty much do whatever you want. However, in the absence of an agreement, the general answer would be yes, you would still have to pay child support, but child support would be based on what's called an offset. So it would only be the difference between you and your spouse's income. So whichever spouse makes more, let's say spouse A makes $50,000 and spouse B makes $30,000, then the spouse that makes more would pay the difference of the $20,000 difference between $30,000 to $50,000. Okay, next question. Who gets my child if I pass away without a will? So this question, I'm actually going to defer in a later podcast here in the next week. I'm going to do a podcast based on wills and kind of how probate interweaves in with divorces. So we will save that question for them. The next question has to do with child support again. Is overtime counted for my child support? And the answer is yes. And most people think, look, I don't get overtime regularly, so it shouldn't be counted. Any income that you have is counted in child support. And what happens is it's averaged over a 12-month period. So it accounts for sometimes you make it and sometimes you don't. But it's all considered income for purposes of child support. Okay, how long do I have to pay child support? So generally, child support goes until either the child graduates from high school or turns 18, whichever is later. So if you have a child that's 18 but is still in their senior year, then your child support obligation will continue until they graduate from high school. Okay, if I get an inheritance, do I have to split it during my divorce? So generally inheritances, no, those are not considered community property. So if you've listened to previous podcasts of mine, we've talked about what community property is, and I will defer you to those, but an inheritance is considered separate property. So it does not have to be divided during a divorce as long as you have not commingled. Commingling means you have not put it into an account with your spouse. So make sure you keep it separate and you don't commingle it with community property funds. Otherwise it will get a little bit sticky. Okay, when can my kids choose who they want to live with? So this is always a hot topic for custody cases when you have kids that are the age of 12 or older, because everybody always thinks my kid's now 12. That's the golden age in Texas. They can decide who they want to live with, and that is not exactly the case. So once they're 12, they can verbalize which parent they prefer to live with. However, it's only a factor for the judge to consider or to not consider in making the determination of who's going to be primary. So the judge can talk with the child, or the child can have an ad litem and they can say why they want to live with that parent, but the judge can decide to either consider it or to not consider it, however much weight they want to give it, and that doesn't mean that the judge is going to do what the child wants. Who keeps the dog during a divorce? This is also kind of another topic that's slowly creeping up and becoming more and more prominent with people who have pets. So that gets, again, a little bit sticky because there is not a visitation plan, which I have been asked before, can we do a visitation of the dog? There is nothing that's enforceable, just shy of having a written contract with your spouse as to this is what we're gonna do. I would definitely look at what parent is registered on that dog when you adopted it or bought it, who is actually the registered owner. And I would look at it that way. This law is kind of getting more and more litigated, but as much as you can, I would try to come to some kind of an agreement as to what you want to do with your pets. Because if you go to a judge, you may have a judge that's a pet lover and you may have a judge that's not. But if they say, you know, spouse A gets the dog, it is what it is. Okay, what happens if I refuse? Hold on a second. Which parent gets to claim their child on their tax return? Okay, so tax returns, and this is another kind of hot topic discussion. Taxes, right, are governed by the IRS, which is federal. Divorce is state law. So you and your spouse need to either come to some kind of an agreement as to who is going to claim the exemption for the children. Otherwise, you're going to have to just follow IRS rules. And whatever the IRS rules designate, they're going to tell you who can claim the child. Or I would consult with a tax attorney, as I am not a tax attorney. Okay, last one. How is child support determined if the father gets paid under the table or the mother gets paid under the table? So for this one, there's a couple of things that you can kind of look to determine income. One, do they pay taxes? Do they do a tax return? Two, do they have a bank account and make regular deposits into a bank account? Three, what is their earning potential, right? So if they have a bachelor's degree in engineering and then they're working under the table, sometimes the judge can set child support based on what their earning potential is based on past jobs. Or we can pull bank statements and see if they're making large purchases or deposits, and those can be substantiated as income as well if the judge wants to consider those income. Okay, so those are all the questions that I have for today. Again, if you have any questions, look us up at moralespadillaLaw.com, or you can go ahead and email us at lawfulinsightpodcast@gmail.com. Again, if you're listening to this on Podbean, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to catch the latest episodes. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you. Bye-bye.